Well, aloha, everybody. And thanks for coming to the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii event. And my name is Joe Kent. I think you all know me. And by the way, I just came back from my honeymoon yesterday, so thank you. Thank you. We went to Sedona, Arizona, and had a great time. It was awesome, and I saw a lot of family there and everything. I'll have to bring Annie here sometime so you can all meet her. But today we're not talking about that. We're talking about, are Hawaii officials paid too little or too much? And it's a good question. Oh, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I love can you tell me a story?
Okay, sure.
It's a beautiful story, how he met his wife. It's amazing.
Okay, so thanks for the question. So I was walking along the street on let's see, Baratania on Maui, and I saw the most beautiful girl on the other side of the street waiting at the bus stop, and I said, I gotta meet her. So I ran across the street and didn't get hit, and I asked her, I said, you're so beautiful, you have to give me your number. And she did. And
Have you ever asked a girl like that in your history of your life?
no, I never asked a girl like that before, so it was spontaneous. And now I've got the wedding ring 3 years later, so yeah, great, thank you. Well, I really feel like I'm at my wedding reception here, but... So if you don't know, my name is Joe Kent, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii. We're a public policy think tank working to promote individual liberty, economic freedom, and accountable government. And Dr. Keli'i Akina, the president of the Institute, couldn't be here today, but he sends his warmest aloha to you all. He had to do some work at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs today. So again, are Hawaii officials paid too much or too little? Well, we have someone here to talk about that. His name is Steve Frates. He's the Director of Research at the Pepperdine University Davenport Institute School of Public Policy, and he's also the President of the Center for Government Analysis and a national expert on government pay scales. And before we get to him, I want to know if you folks have this sheet that I put together today. If someone doesn't have it, I'll come around and give it to you. But basically, it shows that the different salaries of Maui County Council members and of the Maui mayor as compared to the other islands and the rest of the nation too. So, and we did a little survey too that you can see some of the results of. So that's kind of interesting and helps put the question in perspective. Well, Steve Frates did something wonderful. He created a report for us called State of Hawaii Public Employee Compensation and Related Liabilities. That's a mouthful, but basically it's talking about debt and how much debt we have and how much public employees are paid. So won't you welcome Steve Frates.
Thank you very much. Joe, usually I don't even need a microphone, but I'll use it. Joe wired me up. I'm armed and dangerous, but this is so much more fun. And I think one of you is going to click through the deal. A little background. One, aloha mahalo. It's great to be here. I have some roots in Hawaii. My great-great-great-grandmother was one of Queen Emma's sisters. And it's a long story, but for those of you that are familiar with Oahu, you may know just north of the Ala Moana Center, there is a street called Dreyer Street. And Alex Dreyer was my great-grandfather. And the McClatchy plantation on the south side of Kauai, before the McClatchys bought it from my great-grandfather, was the Dreyer plantation. He was a German engineer who came to Hawaii, and he married a local woman named Emma Titcomb. Emma Titcomb was the daughter of, that's another, I guess, prominent Hawaiian name. She was the daughter of a Scottish-American ship captain who came to Hawaii in the 1820s or somewhere around there, took a look, put a hibiscus behind his ear and went native, and never went back to wherever he came from. He married one of Queen Emma's sisters. So my sisters who keep track of this say we're 1/16th or 1/32nd or whatever it is Polynesian. So my family's been coming down here for many, many years, although generally to Kauai. I have to say Maui's very nice as well, but all the islands are very nice. So it's a pleasure to be here. Joe, I'm going to turn you loose or whoever's loose. What I was saying to do in this particular case was take a look at the context of the situation that you were facing on the finances for the state of Hawaii. And yeah, we'll get to the salary stuff specifically, but you need to know the circumstances under which you're operating. This basically is just the methodology. What do? We don't look at budgets. We look at audited financial statements called comprehensive annual financial reports. And we also look at the actuarial statements. A lot of that is digging into grinding minutia. It's one of the reasons why I wear trifocals. I've been doing this for 40 years and it's not good for long-range vision. When I was a boot ensign in the Navy, I had 10/20 in one eye and 12/20 in the other. I was stationed on a destroyer in Pearl Harbor. Now I go around anything inside of 3 feet like a Grail, reaching out and trying to find things. So next one. We'll hit you with the executive summary right off the bat. Government expenditures for public employee retirement system in this state increased 3,684% between 2000 and 2018. You can't keep going up like that. You're in trouble, okay? You were paying $22 million in 2000, you're up to 847. In one sense, you'd sit there and say, well, you have this long-term obligation, at least we're saddling up to meet it. You're not. You're going downhill very fast. So even though you're spending more money, you're going deeper and deeper in debt. The next one here, despite the huge increase in public employee retirement systems expenditures noted above, your system went from being 94.9% funded in the year 2000. Rough rule of thumb in this business is you want to be above 80%. You go below 80%, the bond guys start to get sweaty palms. You go below 60%, even politicians can get sweaty palms. You go below 40%, and you're in Illinois territory. You're in trouble. You're going to go bankrupt. You went from 94.9% in 2000 down to 55.2% 18 years later. Despite, remember, you're increasing the amount of money you're spending, it's still not enough. You're going deeply in debt. Your elected officials have given away the farm, and it's getting worse, not better. The unfunded liability for the public employee pension system increased 2,612% from 2000 to 2018. It went from 494 million. That's what you owed to make yourself whole, okay? Now you owe 13 billion. Not good, all right? But it gets worse. The unfunded liability for other post-employee benefits, and you'll hear this expression, this is insider pool. You want to dazzle elected officials sometime? Sidle up to them and say, hey, how are our OPEBs? That's what the insiders, the accountants all talk about. Other post-employment benefits, mostly it's healthcare system for public employees, retired public employees. The OPEBs in this state, okay, the unfunded amount went from 14 billion, okay,
right here actually.
Oh, excuse me, went from 9 billion to 12 billion in a very short period of time. It's almost as bad as the situation you have with the pensions. Put the two together, OPEBs, the pension cost and the cost of unfunded benefits. By the way, how are they paid for? How is employee retiree health corps paid for in Hawaii right now? It's coming out of your operating budget. There's less money for cops, there's less money for schools, there's less money to maintain things. You're buying employee health care because it's totally unfunded. It's gone, that combined went from, in just 10 years, went from 14 billion to 25 billion. All right? Now to put that in perspective, and I always like to give this in perspective because as Everett McKinley Dirksen, the famous Illinois senator, said back in the 60s, a billion here, a billion there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. Okay? You guys are talking about real money, but as Joe Stalin said, killing one man's a crime, killing a million people's a statistic. And that's where you are. The combined unfunded liabilities, okay, to put it in perspective, last year, statewide, the spending for education, K-12 education, was $3,226 million. In other words, the combined unfunded public retirement liability is 8 times larger than what the state spends on K-12 education. All right? So when you hear a politician or an editorial writer say, hey, we need more money for the children, the money for the children you've kissed off. You could fund 8 public K-12 school systems for your unfunded debt as of right now. Not a good situation. Next one, we'll go through a little bit of background on this. This shows the population in Hawaii over an 18-year period. Slide up to the table and we'll see it a little bit more. But here's what's interesting. Go down to the bottom. This is the population of the state, the number of public employees, and slide on up. You'll see over this time, in 10 years, the population went up 11%. Number of employees actually went down. So despite the fact you're spending more money on the public employee system, you're getting fewer people, lower services. The 18-year change, population 18%, employees 12%. So the money that you're spending, that huge increase that you're spending, just to operate the system, is not resulting in higher services.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you're saying that the population went up, but the number of public employees went up, but not as fast,
not as
right?
rapidly. That's
Okay,
correct.
got it.
Next slide. And this shows it graphically. I'm addicted to graphs. I love them because it makes it very clear. But you can see things are pretty much in line. That's the gray lines, the number of public employees. Population is the other line. Why do I like graphs? I've been in this business for 40 years. I learned something the hard way. Newspaper and television reporters can't read. So you put things in graphs that they can see very simply, and sometimes they get it. But if you write it out, no, they're not going to get it. Next one, please. This is expenditures. This is just for salaries and wages and numbers putting into the system from 2018. Very rapid increase over the 18-year period for those fewer public employees. It's gone up 87%. Pension expenditures. Remember, your pension system's going down. It's unfunded. Despite that, you've increased those expenditures by 3,684%. You're paying more money and you're getting upside down. The percentage in both combined groups, 122%. In the last 10 years, respective increases were for 18% for salaries and wages, 73.4% for pension expenditures. So not good. Next one up. And this essentially shows the data sets. And by the way, this report, it is the commission, the Grassroots Foundation Institute commissioned it. Joe has it. You can bug him for it. And if he says he hasn't got copies, he has the thumb drive that has everything, and he has an unbound copy. For some of you, there are a couple of bound copies, but I think you have those. Those custody items, the larger your contribution to the Grassroots Institute, the more likely you are to get one. And for the right price, I'll throw in an autograph. Okay. Next one, please. Okay, this is just the data. And you can see here the total salaries and wages and the employees' contributions. But you're talking about real money. When you talk about, that's billions of dollars, that's $5 billion. Next one, please. Okay, this is my favorite one. Unfunded actuarial liability system. The ratio, so I mentioned earlier the 494 million up to the amount it is now. The retirement system sunk. Cause of this explosion is probably due to 2 factors. One, an increase in the pension benefits awarded to employees. Now this is critical when you get to the thing that Joe mentioned at the top of this meeting, and that is salary increases. Usually what you hear is, geez, inflation's gone up 3 or 4%. Our people deserve 3 or 4% to hold on. That's usually the party line that you'll hear. The downside is that the benefit expenditure, the benefit these people get, is huge. I have not read the actuarial tables and charts or the benefit ratios in Hawaii, but I'll give you some examples from California. A healthy 21-year-old man who starts out as a firefighter in California can retire 30 years later at the age of 50 with a guaranteed benefit of over 100% of his salary and full pension and auxiliary benefits, health benefits and all that stuff. Guaranteed for the rest of their life, adjusted for inflation. The typical amount of money those people retire at, this last salary, is between $125,000 and $150,000. So if you were to go to an insurance agent or you were to go to a stockbroker and say, I have a healthy 50-year-old male here who's in good physical condition, and I want to provide a pension for this person, adjusted for inflation, of, say, $120,000 a year for the rest of their life. And oh, by the way, I want to provide full health care, dental, vision, and all the other stuff. And that insurance agent or stockbroker would look in their actuarial tables, and they'd come back to you with a big smile on their face, and they say, whip out your checkbook and write me a check for around $3 million. So we have made these people not millionaires in California, we have made them multi-millionaires. Stop and think about that at the age of 50. Now that's just the average. There's some people up the food chain that make north of $400,000. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff makes $225,000. And I'm not talking about fire chiefs, I'm talking about firemen holding hoses at 50 that are retired with a guaranteed income greater than the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You can't do that forever. You can't do that forever. Now I don't know.
I have a question. So may I borrow your microphone?
Yeah.
So I'm not really a fast reader. I don't know if you all read this, but the part that stands out to me is where on the third paragraph where you explain why the debt happened. A lot of people ask, okay, we've got these unfunded liabilities. It's a bunch of debt. So how did the debt happen? And you kind of explain it here. Could you explain that
Sure.
for us?
Here's the answer in one word. Politicians. Only elected officials can spend public money. Only elected officials can set benefit ratios and salaries, period. Okay? All this has happened because the elected officials, and sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, it's the bureaucracy that's done it, or it's this, that, or the other that's done it. Not true. In the United States, the only people who can appropriate money and levy taxes are elected officials. That's what your elected officials have done. The people who represent you have done that. Yes?
They represent the unions that are getting these loans.
Very salient observation, young man. And you're a solid B student in my graduate class right there. So yes, that comes down to the reality. One of the reasons why oftentimes public employee unions are very powerful is because this kind of information is not available to the general public. But because of the Grassroots Institute, you now have that for Hawaii. And let me put this in perspective. I've worked with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Some of you may know that in California for many, many years. And they have used my reports like this for many times to beat up the other side. Outnumbered though they are by rough numbers, they have 250, 300 members. Public employee unions have north of 1.8 million people who give more money. And the Jarvis guys have fought rearguard action, in part because of data like this. It's tough to get. It's not in budgets. You don't see it in budgets. You have to see it in audited statements. As I say, one of the reasons my vision isn't what it is, I did this for many years. I still do it a little bit. I confess I do have younger colleagues, my former master's students who have real jobs. They do a lot of the actual reading of the numbers for me after I point them at the documents. My ability to do that and manipulate a computer rapidly has gone downhill. It wasn't that high to begin with, and they go uphill. But yes, Philip, that's a very salient point. Public employee unions tend to dominate elected officials at the local level, and they do it by doing three things. One is everything's for the children. That's the school guys. The other thing is public safety. That's the cops. The third thing is public safety. That's the firefighters. Okay? So absent this kind of data, how are you going to beat that argument? You're not.
Can I explain something?
Sure.
One particularity about Hawaii, though, when it comes to public unions, is that the union negotiations happen at the state level, whereas for the county, the counties and the county councils have much less power over those negotiations.
That's true. As my brother-in-law Pete points out,
Would you keep the mic a little closer?
Oh, well, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can be very loud if you want.
No, just do this. Yeah.
The commission, I think the salary commission here on Maui, looks at just the elected officials and a few senior people in the bureaucracy. The state runs most of this stuff, and that's quite true. So you want to change the culture, you got to change the culture of the state. And that's the reality. Next one, please. These are the fund numbers. This was the unfunded actuarial liability, and you can see it's grown and grown and grown and grown. 18 years, it's gone from 494 million to 12,900 million, an increase of 2,612%. Okay. The retirement funded ratio, as I mentioned earlier, you want to keep that at a minimum above 80%. It's better, of course, to be 100. You were looking pretty good for 3 years. You're sinking rapidly. Okay. Ultimately, that leads to one of three things. Actually, two things guaranteed: higher taxes, lower services, and eventually you might face bankruptcy. Now, some cities in California have gone through bankruptcy. It's gone to court. Some of the California courts have ruled that the pension system still has to be made whole, which means those cities are just going to go bankrupt again. However, there are some cases going through the federal courts that may change that. But you're going to see, in my professional opinion, in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a couple of states go bankrupt, with Illinois being at the front of the bus. They're down to 38% funding. They're almost to the point now that if they took every tax dollar that they raised in the state and put it into the pension system, they still couldn't get out of their hole. Skip all the services, everything. So not a good situation. Next one, please.
Oh, this is the next one. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, sort of graphically. Good. So you can see that trend line's not good. And keep in mind, you're putting more and more money into the system all the time. But that ratio is going down. And that's because the benefits are costing more than the actuarial amount of funds you have on hand to pay for them. Next one. I threw this in just as a side. Every once in a while, it's good to have people see how much it would cost the average family, that type of stuff. So if you take a look here, the UAAL per capita, that's for every citizen, went up quite a bit. And to make the system whole, that increased from $408 it would have cost the average citizen, per citizen, a family of four times that. In 2000 to 9,341, an increase of 2,191%. Most people have not paid 2,191% more for something now than they did in the year 2000, and especially when you're getting less.
Can I say something again? These are just some clarifying questions. So
Yeah.
UAAL, does anyone here know what UAAL means? It stands for Unfunded Actuarial...
Keep going, you're doing good.
I forget what the other A stands for, liability.
Yeah.
It's basically the unfunded liability.
It's the unfunded liability.
Okay.
It's the short end for the unfunded liability.
Okay. And that has gone from 408 per person to
9,000
per person.
But
Yeah.
keep in mind, that's just what it is now. It's increasing. Good news, huh? So go down here a little bit. Right-hand column shows the per capita income of Hawaiians from 2000 to 2018. It went up per change in per capita, population adjusted per capita personal income was 87.4. So the UAL per capita increased over 20 times faster than the personal income. You can't do that forever. Go up to the next table and we'll take a look. So you can see here, this was the UAL per capita going up down here to 500%. And even in the last 10 years, it went up quite a bit. The 18-year change was 2,000. 10-year change was 134. The 10-year change and 18-year change in personal income was 87.4. 10-year change was 26.4 in personal income. Oftentimes I'm asked why we use the population adjusted per capita personal income. And you typically, and this will often be done by people in the unions, they'll say, well, are these constant dollars or inflation adjusted dollars? This takes that whole argument away. Because anytime you use an inflation factor, it's open to debate. The basket of goods used, how much gasoline, how much for food, how much for clothing, whatever it is. A lot of debate on this. Most of the economists now, the pros that do this kind of stuff, don't use those numbers anymore. We use population adjusted per capita personal income. Why? Because it tells you how much money year to year, or for any particular year that the people have to spend. So in the state of Hawaii, in 2018, that number was $53,293. Now that's for everybody in the state. Obviously there's some people who make much more than that, many people who make much less. Pete told me the other day, the Hawaiian definition for a surfer without a girlfriend is a homeless person. I didn't know that. But, so there are people that are below that. But eventually, why this matters is, if this number is going up faster than that number, eventually the lines cross. And all the money goes for pension benefits. A pleasant prospect, isn't it? Next one, please. And this shows that graphically, go ahead and slide up. And of course you can see it's gone up, as we mentioned earlier. Next one. Okay, this is the UAL, the unfunded pension liability, for every year from 2007 to 2018. The second shows other post-employment benefits, unfunded liability for the corresponding years, OPEBs, and retiree health cards. Hawaii governments have not adequately funded the shortfall, okay? Especially I might mention for healthcare, at least in the pension system, there's some money there in the fund. It's 50% funded. It's not good, but there's something there. In the OPEBs, there's nothing there. You've got almost nothing. You're paying cash on the barrelhead each year. That's not a healthy situation. And then the combined liability, just in these 7 years, went from 14 billion to 25 billion. That's a big jump. Next one. See the table there? And this is just for the last 10 years. Pension liability, 13 billion. OPEBs, primarily healthcare, 12. Total amount, $25 billion. And it's going the wrong way. Next one. And that's per capita. We can slide through that. Basically, you can see that that's going up. Remember the other one we showed you, we just took a look at the pension. But if you combine pension and OPEBs, it's up to $17 billion a head. All right? And when you consider that the per capita personal income is around 53,000, that's starting to bite pretty deep. That's starting to hit pretty hard. Next one. And this is my favorite one. Oh, that's the favorite. No, this is my favorite. It shows the pension liability, the OPEB liability, the combined pension and OPEB liability, total salaries and pension expenditures compared to K-12 education. Okay? Slide up and we'll take a look at this. This is an eye-opener. Okay. Pension liability, 2007, 5. OPEBs, 9. Total, 14. Total that the state's paying. Here, 2018, 13 billion, 12, total 25, total salaries and benefits for all employees. That's how much you spend in the state on K-12 education. That's it. All right? So we take a look, the 11-year change. Pension went up 8 billion, OPEBs 2 billion, almost 3, 11.2 billion, salaries and benefits of 1. Education increased $937 million. You're not educating your kids. You're providing retirement benefits. You're not a government. You're an insurance agency. That's what you're doing. Next one. And of course, we put this in perspective by combining the two. Go up, I'll show this last couple of charts here. Tables. This is the dollar change between 2007 and 2018. This is the dollar change increase in OPEB liability. This is salaries and pension contribution. This is K-12 education. That's the rate of change. Slide down to the bottom, and you'll see that there's quite a bit of difference there in those three. To put it in perspective, as I mentioned in the executive summary and earlier in the report, you're spending 8 or 9 times as much, are going to have to spend to make yourself whole on pensions as you are on educating the young people of Hawaii. That's not a formula for a successful or healthy state. So when we talk about pensions and we talk about employee, and the excellent work Joe did for the Salary Commission, what can you do about that? Well, ultimately, as Philip has pointed out, some other people pointed out, that's negotiated at the state level for all the employees. Symbolically, it would be very significant here in Maui if the elected officials cut back their salaries and benefits. So I took a look at stuff, and as I'm wont to do, and what's the population of Maui? The entire state's 1.4? It's 144,000. Cities of Anaheim, Irvine, and Santa Ana in Orange County all have populations over 300,000, twice as much as yours. They pay their elected officials less than $2,000 a month. Could you do it for less? And as I understand it, the elected officials here on Maui also have a staff and other people related. For those cities, there's no staff. They only have the professional civil service that they oversee. The individual council people have no staff. So could it be done? Sure, it could be done. It's a matter of political will. However, I would leave that to the tender mercies of Pete and Phil and Joe and the rest of you to wrestle with. The essence of it is that your state, beautiful as it is, what a Chamber of Commerce day. I got up this morning, Pete's, he's over there just down the road in Hawaii and Sprecklesville, and it was raining and cold, and I said, man, I'm going to phone the Chamber of Commerce and complain. Somebody at the house told me, sit tight, wait a little while. Half an hour later, it's clear with a beautiful rainbow going over towards the eye. So I took a photograph and sent it back to my brothers and sisters in California saying I was really roughing it. This was a job trip, yeah. I didn't get much sympathy from that end. But yes, it's a beautiful place. It's absolutely fabulous, but you're in trouble.
Okay, well, I want to move to question and answer soon. First, let's give Steve a round of applause for this presentation. Thank you. And if you have a question, raise your hand, but I want to start with, now we started off talking about salaries. You know, should council members, should officials, should the mayor be paid more? Here we're talking about unfunded liabilities and retirement issues, public employee retirement issues. Now, the council, the mayor, and the officials are all in that
Yes,
public employee system. So what do you say about the dynamic where those employees that are also in it? Go ahead.
There's a legal term for it. It's called conflict of interest. The elected officials in Hawaii vote for their own retirement benefits. You might want to change that. Okay? Stop and think about that. These people on the Maui board, the mayor and the board of supervisors or council, however you call it, are beneficiaries of the system. That is a screaming, blatant, stunning conflict of interest. They benefit from what? Raising the benefits. They have a direct benefit. They're not your advocates. They're their own advocates. And as long as you keep electing them, that's what you're going to get.
And one more addition to that is that there's a concept known as double dipping, which is that if you work at the council, you get a retirement package, but then if you work then at the legislature, you can get another retirement package, and then if you work at the
U.S. Congress,
then you can have a third retirement package. So Neil Abercrombie, for example, has triple dipped, and there's a number of officials that have done double dipping or triple dipping, things like that.
there are a number of technical terms for that in the finance profession, in the academic finance profession. But the one I like was the one when I was doing a seminar like that, a meeting like this, making a presentation at a city in California. A lady in the back stood up and said, Dr. Frates, I have exactly the definition of what that is. And I said, well, yes, ma'am, I'm very interested. She said, they're face down in the trough.
Okay, questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You did mention there's two different types of pension. There's a defined benefit and defined contribution. So
Yeah, go ahead.
We're having a defined benefit right now.
Yeah, what you have here, as I understand it, in this state is a defined benefit. What's a defined benefit? It means that you're on the hook for whatever you promised the employees. Defined contribution is you make $1 contribution and that's it. That's what they get. Okay. Now, there are some places that have started to try and push for defined contribution. That's clearly something that's going to evolve throughout the United States. The state of Texas is pretty much defined contribution. By the way, they don't have any UAAL. You all.
Any other questions?
Other questions? Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead. Yes, sir. Let me get this back to you.
I just wanted to ask kind of a general,
Sure.
uncomfortable question.
I like uncomfortable questions.
Okay, so at what point do we get civil unrest?
I leave that to the tender mercies of the citizens of Hawaii. I've been doing this stuff now for 40 years, and I was talking with Joe before the session today. And back when Howard Jarvis was first rattling around with the saving the citizens of California, the homeowners of California, many of whom were getting taxed out of their houses and just couldn't keep their houses. He used to walk around the state legislature. He was kind of a gruff old guy, and he'd always have a briefcase with paper sticking out of it. And he had a habit of walking along walls on hallways kind of like this, like he couldn't quite stand up straight unless he was. And people regarded him as kind of a crotchety old duffer that nobody paid attention to. Yeah, that's just crazy, Howard, nobody gives a damn. You should have seen the reaction after Prop 13 passed. Prop 13 didn't pass, it was a landslide.
Can you explain what
Prop 13 said basically that property taxes in California could only go up 2% per year. That's all that they could go up. That was capped at 2%. They could change based on when property was sold. So over time, property would get sold and move up. There's a move afoot, by the way, right now in California by the public employee unions to split the role to make it so commercial and retail properties, business properties, are not covered by Prop 13. These guys have the funny idea that if they increase property taxes for businesses are going to stay in California. Well, they go up by 7,000 or 8,000%. I don't think so. However, people regarded Howard as kind of a crazy old duffer. Now, I was in my era of misspent youth an assistant to the city manager in Fullerton. The mayor of Fullerton was president of the League of Cities, and I used to go up to Sacramento all the time with them and deal with the professional staff. And they said, hey, you rubes down there in Southern California, don't worry about this Prop 13, it's not going to pass. This will put things in perspective. The state had a $3 billion budget back then, or $3 billion surplus. We'll give $1 billion back to the taxpayers, and that'll cool everything off. Well, it didn't. The state budget was only 10 or 15 billion, but they still got clobbered. There's my favorite expression of that. Jerry Brown was then in his neophyte stage, in his first few terms as governor of California. He was adamantly opposed to Proposition 13. The day after Proposition 13 passed by better than 2-1, Jerry became an enthusiastic supporter of Prop 13. The joke we went around the Capitol was Jerry Brown's name had changed to Jerry Jarvis. People used to call him Jerry Jarvis for quite a bit. So those kind of revolutions can happen. I will say this. It was this kind of data we made public, and the work of guys like you folks, Joe, make the difference. Do not despair. It's not the end. You can change it. We've got one back here.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I really ought to give it to him. He drove me over here.
First, I want to thank Gladys for coming and going, because I believe they'll share information, and Gladys Spice has already asked me, and you've seen this from Hawaii's side. Where I first met you was Maui Economic Development, right? Oh, I'm sorry. MEO. And then you were a wonderful council member, supportive of all our things, and then you're with you're with water, and now you're with the mayor's office, right? Anyway, I'm really glad she's here. And one thought I had is all of us are on the same page. Whether you're a government employee or not, you would like this to be funded. Everybody would like it to be funded. We know whether you're a taxpayer is a dark looking picture, but if you're getting your retirement plan, you don't want to hear that it's not funded. That's not a pleasant thought. So I really appreciate that. And then a new thing that Steve brought to my attention is this concept of the public and the working people not being in the same retirement system because you said it's a conflict of interest. So that's something I hadn't really focused on before, but it's a very good point, and I appreciate you for backing up. Last thing is I'm trying to figure out why he was married to my sister. She took her life a couple of years ago. Anyway, why do they call you Uncle Silly?
His daughters have called me Uncle Silly for years. When I do this kind of thing, I don't think your daughters saw this side of me very often. They saw the guy who would play around in my backyard in the swimming pool at our house in Newport Beach, jump out of the pool with them, play with the stuff, had to be dragged out of the pool by my wife along with them to eat. And so I was kind of a cool guy. Now it's interesting with the girls, and I have many nephews and nieces, Dan and I did. The girls, somewhere around 10, 11, 12, 13, you go from being kind of cool to sort of, you go from rocket fuel to asphalt. You're so dumb you don't know anything, you know? The boys still think you're cool because you can tell them war stories about being in the Navy and flying jets, and they think, oh wow, it blew up and it made things go, you know, they think you're fairly cool. The girls, of course, mature about 50 years before the boys. The girls at 18 are adults. The boys, mid-40s, mid-50s, start to come around. But those two were two of my favorites, Pete's beautiful kids. And Pete's wife, Pete's sister, my wife, I consider myself extremely lucky in the 3-row bank shot of life that I really had 36 fabulous years with my soulmate. And Pete, I thank you for sharing your sister with me because I really lucked out. Thank you.
Well, with that said, let's thank Steve Frates for being here today. And thank you all for being here too. And we'll stick around to answer questions or anything you want. So thank you.